Hey everybody, welcome once again to the road to the ProcureTech Cup. It's ProcureTech time for one last time this season, and it's the show that's all about showing you, the procurement professional, the art of the possible with procurement technology. So this is episode 27 of the 2025 season, and today we've got Fairmarkit on the show. They're going to wrap things up for us in great fashion, I hope. They are coming to show us their autonomous sourcing solution, and I'm going to ask them to define them what that means for us, because it might be a confusing term given it's used a lot on in the market and in this space. So we'll get to that in a second here. But before we jump into the content, let me bring on my co-host for today, Sheena Smith, Senior Vice President at RiseNow of Growth. How's it going, Sheena?
Hi, Joelle. Thanks for having me. And I'm just curious. I mean, you're at the end of the season here, so how's your ACL doing?
Oh, geez. well, it's a bit rough, a bit tough, but we're heading into the playoffs.
PT before Monday. You're going to be ready to play on Monday?
Yeah. I'm icing it over the weekend, and we'll be ready to go for the playoffs because we got to get to the cup, right?
I heard you have 40 plus brackets filled out now.
That's right. And if you're looking at the show, if you're looking at the chat on LinkedIn Live, and you haven't filled out your prediction bracket, that's a really good segue into the housekeeping today, right? Go fill out your bracket. We'll get into what that means in a second here. So just a reminder, why Sheena's referring to my ACL here is we've been doing demos since September with all the participants of the Cup, or at least 25 of them. And then in the tournament next week, we've got 64 ProcureTech Cup or ProcureTech brands participating. How can you participate in the tournament next week on LinkedIn? If you've never seen it happen before, it's going to get pretty crazy. Go fill out your prediction bracket. So the link is in the chat. You predict who's going to win the tournament based on the popular vote, not who you want to win the tournament, right? So an important distinction. And whoever gets the best prediction is going to win a prize pack from Pure Procurement and RiseNow. So that should be fun in parallel to the actual tournament itself. We're also releasing an ebook where you have the links to all the demos that happened this season, other demos that vendors that didn't come on the show provided, and all the info on what they do, their tagline, how many employees they have, where they're headquartered. So a really nice catalog of who's in the event and what's happening in terms of innovation in our space. We'll also have a daily show, noon Eastern, every day next week and the week after to update you on the action. So make sure you tune in via my profile on LinkedIn. To have that, and Sheena and I have some pretty interesting little tidbits prepared for you, so make sure to tune into that. And then lastly, vote, right? So I'll have a post. My daily post on LinkedIn will be the actual tournament next week, so you just need to comment on the post to vote. So make sure that that you do those things if you want to keep being part of the action. So that being said, that's the housekeeping for today. Let's, without further delay, bring in Tiago and Tristan here. So Tristan, director at the labs at Fairmarkit, and Tiago, head of solutions consulting. Thanks so much for being here on the last show of the season, guys.
It's great to be here.
Great to have you.
So I've already talked long enough. So Tristan, I will give you the floor so that we can get going here. Oh, excuse me. I think I put Tiago's slides up here. Selling the punch.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Sorry. Nice to meet everybody. Really looking forward to today. So maybe a little bit more about Fairmarkit first. So Fairmarkit was founded in 2017. We're an autonomous sourcing platform. What we talk about when we mean autonomous is automating as many steps as possible along the entire journey of the sourcing process. Over the time period that we've built out our company, we now have employees in over 8 different countries around the world, in multiple different continents. We're about 120 people globally now at this point. And we get to work with some phenomenal organizations, like you can see here, right? So we like to say we specialize in the large, complex, big, hairy type of organizations that have a lot of different challenges that they're looking to address through autonomous sourcing. Now, one big other piece, though, that's really important when we talk about autonomous sourcing is how does this also fit into the wider ecosystem? So I'd be remiss to not mention that our partner ecosystem is really broad. You see some names up here even as well that use Fairmarkit on behalf for other customers, as well as technology partners like SAP and Coupa and ServiceNow and many others. So it's an important piece that It is an interconnected ecosystem, and that's really, really important to us from an autonomous sourcing perspective. Right. But what does that actually mean when we talk about where Fairmarkit actually fits in and what we do? This is the typical spend graph that everybody probably has seen 1,000 times in every different slideshow that talks about breaking down spend. But Fairmarkit started in this kind of tail tactical space, right? That's what, when we were founded in 2017, the challenge that we were looking to address is how can we get more competition out on the market for more spend for customers without having to hire massive teams. So it's about capacity creation. And in the tail, when we talk about autonomous, it means end-to-end, fully automated, all the way from demand to award. It means finding the right channels and moving quickly. When we then start moving up that scale into the more tactical, there's a lot of spend that people actually start to realize actually can still run fully autonomous, but then there's other elements to it that are more AI assisted. When we talk about AI assisted, it's taking chunks of the process and working together with our customers to identify where we can automate more and more. So things like scoping, things like bid analysis, things like automatically recommending the suppliers, all these great things that we can do to continue to enhance and speed up the process as we move more and more into this tactical and then into the strategic spend where different customers are managing it. And I think at this point, I hand over to Tiago, actually.
Yeah, and I think as we're transitioning to the demo, a question I'd have for you is like, and you kind of touched on it, right? But I think it's really important to highlight for the viewers the difference between autonomy and automation, right? And like how do you think about those two things, given that they're used synonymously often in the market?
Yeah. Now, the two ways that I've heard autonomous used, and I'll be clear about kind of where we play in kind of both, but autonomous can mean handing off autonomy to your end user, so moving it out of the procurement world and into your end user's hands. When we usually talk about autonomy, we talk about actually automating the entire process, not handing it off. Most of our customers still use Fairmarkit within a centralized procurement team, right? So that's, I think, a big distinguishing factor where our autonomy means that a per procurement FTE has a much higher throughput than they might have without Fairmarkit. So we're talking taking customers with the same FTEs running 100 events a year to thousands, if not tens of thousands of sourcing events per year. Now, as Tiago will get into it more and more, there is elements of it where we actually start giving autonomy to more end users for more and more, especially in that tail. But the main focus for Fairmarkit has always been to increase procurement capacity.
Very clear.
Hope that clears it up a bit more.
For sure. If not, I'm sure people will ask follow-up questions in the comments here. But that being said, Tiago, you have the floor for the demo.
Thank you, Joel. This is really exciting because what we're going to be able to show you here is different aspects of the Fairmarkit solution as it portrays to the requisitioner, as well as, to Tristan's point, procurement, right? This demo could easily go 3 hours long. We don't have that luxury today. So I'm going to try to keep it really simple. Fairmarkit has historically worked alongside our customers' buying processes and buying tools, whether it's an ERP or a P2P or an orchestration layer. We're able to work along those tools to essentially intercept the demand and then source it with more or less intervention or human in the loop, if you will. In fact, some of the logos that we saw on that initial slide have Fairmarkit running fully autonomously, where humans are involved only if there's an exception. So that is a reality today. But what we also learned over the years is that sometimes AI alone will not solve the problem because of lack of requirements, because of data quality issues. And it's with that in mind that we start employing the same AI, the same techniques, especially around the AI agents on the intake of a sourcing request. We're not an orchestration tool. We don't want to be that. But what we want to do is make sure that sourcing can be done with really good data. And the path to that is essentially allowing the users to navigate to Fairmarkit and then within Fairmarkit interact with the tool so that the tool helps them define, help them guide the process of gathering all the specs, gathering all the details for the goods, for the services that they're looking for, and either send the users to the right buying channel, right? Let me send you back to your P2P, to your ERP, to your orchestration, or let me gather additional contextually relevant details around these goods or services, all the way up to and building scopes of work, which are assets that are notoriously complex to do right, to do accurately. So traditionally, requests that start with relatively vague descriptions end up in a world where now we have all of these details, all of this rich information, these assets that were generated in a really easy manner by the end user, therefore allowing that request to go and be precisely allocated to the correct buying policy of the customer. And what if the buying policy is, as Tristan alluded to, hand it over to procurement, or allow the end user to continue with that self-sourcing or self-service experience? We allow for that to happen, which is then a process enriched by AI, vendor recommendation, and decision-making support that distinguishes Fairmarkit in the space. As of more recently, we are starting to add additional agentic capabilities. For example, around autonomous negotiations, which is a task that is traditionally performed by procurement organizations. After all quotes are received, perhaps we need to go back to the suppliers and negotiate additional pricing improvements. Perhaps we want to negotiate longer payment terms. We get the idea here. What if Fairmarkit's AI engine does that on your behalf, therefore scaling the capacity of your team or freeing up the capacity of the end users to focus on what they need to focus on? That's the idea of what we're seeing here once the data is enriched, once the process is flawlessly executed.
And Thiago, what I see on your slide is like, blocks, right? So we're able to as well, like either include them or exclude them from the scope in a specific client scenario based on, to your point earlier, if they already have intake and orchestration, or if they have a source to pay suite, or if they're going just with ERP, right? And you'll be able to provide the tools to essentially get them to where they need to go based on their as is.
That's exactly right. Everyone does things a little bit differently, and everyone leverages different capabilities. So the tool needs to be flexible in that regard. So what does Fairmarkit look like? It's great to look at all these boxes and all these process flows, but from an end user, where would I go? Where would I start? Well, I would start, for example, here within that request intake process. Maybe users end up in this screen out of their ERP or P2P as a result of their procurement policy. And once they are in this screen, they simply describe what they're looking for. It's important to mention what you're seeing here. Well, it's me and my computer and my browser, but this could be done on a mobile phone. And we have the ability to assert multimodal, where users can take pictures of that part, of that barcode, of that particular engineered part in plant, and let AI help them define the requirements. That's all happening today already. But let me start with something really simple. If someone is looking for a facilities type service, right? Someone is trying to get their parking lot resurfaced. When they let the tool know, hey, this is what we're trying to do, the job that the tool is going to try to do here first and foremost is identify the nature of this request. This looks like it's a services request for facilities and construction, and this was the address. Notice that the tool actually completed the full address. There's intelligence behind it. Not only we're ingesting the customer's data to make the tool smarter, we're also enriching it with our own expertise. As we continue with this requirement definition, one of the things that the tool focuses on is budgetary requirements. On this case, the budget thresholds for the user, because, Joel, to your point, different organizations do it differently, and perhaps different buying channels need to be triggered based on budgetary requirements. So we capture those budgetary requirements and let the system guide the user based on the information that was captured so far. And on this case, what we do is we actually expose the customer's own policy so that the user knows what they have to do next. On this case, hey, you are clear to do self-service sourcing here. Please go gather 3 quotes. But what if this was a part and we would have to route a user to a catalog in Coupa or in Ariba, or even show those catalog items directly in Fairmarkit? That's all within the realm of possibilities, of course. But as we proceed with these types of requests, we are now gathering data that is important for the sourcing exercise. And on this case, I have the ability to define rules, right? To define fields, which is table stakes, of course. I have rules that say whenever I see a services request, always gather these elements, start date and end date, for example. But what I also leverage here is Fairmarkit's expertise and capabilities on understanding the type of request, and more importantly, understanding what suppliers themselves are likely to ask during the sourcing event. We see hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of these on a regular basis. Therefore, the tool only gets smarter. And as a result, the tool thinks that we should ask these questions of the requisitioner. Of course, we attempt to answer that, but the AI requisition can perform any changes here to gather details for that sourcing event. And we proceed.
And Tiago, like, I think it's important to highlight, at least the way I'm interpreting it, is there's a portion of what Kit is giving us that's pre-configured questions, right? Like that spend threshold. But the questions you just showed us, like, that's not something I had to configure as an administrator of this solution, right? It's like contextually, it's a parking lot resurfacing. And so the LLM model is able to say, I should probably ask, these 5-6 things to be able to get that high quality request.
That's
right?
exactly right. That's exactly right. And through the magic of RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, we're now injecting our own expertise throughout this process so that we're not just solely relying on whichever LLM the customer chooses to use with Fairmarkit. So we have that ability. Something that we do really, really well as well, especially in the perspective of the requisitioner, is this right here, scopes of work. Our customer routinely tell us, yes, we have the need for these. It's a struggle. Procurement ends up having to intervene and correct those documents. So we believe that there's a better way to do that and leverage our own AI capabilities to ultimately guide the user through that SOW creation process, which starts to write the document based on the rules, based on the structure, based on the language of the customer, and then allows the user to either adjust the language manually, entirely possible, of course, or interact with the AI engine and essentially provide instructions on what he or she wants to do. For example, make this simple. And the language is rewritten in the way that is conducive to that request. That's the idea of what we're seeing here, is the power of simplicity applied to the complexity that is often associated with the correct creation of these assets that are going to be so important for the sourcing event. In this case, you see it, the deliverables and outcomes being automatically defined with details populated by the AI engine. All of this with minimal user interaction. And the idea here is very, very simple. We started with that simple sentence. We need to resurface that parking lot in Boston. And now we have a full-fledged request that has a lot of information that is now assigned to the right individual, to the right team within the customer's own organization, requests that can be collaborated on, so we can have multiple folks coming in and helping define all the details. And then from here, turning it into a sourcing event, whether something tactical, traditionally a starting point, a very common starting point for our customers, but more often than not these days, strategic sourcing events can also be triggered from here. Now, what happens from this stage? We turn this into an RFQ or an RFP. We're going to go with the theme of simplicity here and continue with a quick request for quote. As I do this, the request is automatically created. And I can be, Joel, the end user doing this, depending on the customer's own assignment rules. If I want self-service, I can do this. I don't have to pick up the phone and call the vendor that I know that I've been doing business for the last 5 years. Now I can use this system to help me find the right vendors. And how does it do that? Well, considering that the event was just created based on the details that I just captured up front, the system will automatically recommend the suppliers for this particular transaction. Suppliers which are primarily the customer's own suppliers, but a supplier list that can be augmented with our own network of 1 million large suppliers worldwide. Right? And what our system is doing here is trying to assess supplier capabilities beyond what the customer's own practice and strategy and data says. So we have an effect of community working it here on the customer's own advantage, to the point where we can also use important data factors that the customer may perceive as important for this process. In other words, if the customer has a sustainability, a diversity program, and he wants to prioritize that type of supplier, absolutely. Let's use those available data elements to drive the way the AI engine prioritizes or deprioritizes suppliers. So we continue to do this, start sourcing events. Suppliers respond in a very quick, transparent manner, to the point where as quotes are received, users will be able to see all the responses that they receive from all suppliers and make a really quick decision. All the important data elements are visible here. If we need Fairmarkit's AI bid analysis agents help for this, we can engage with the agent, start asking questions. Hey, how should I award this event based on these factors? Help me find the right scenario. What if I want to prioritize lead time? All of this is within the realm of what the system is able to do. And when it comes to negotiations, right, we allow suppliers to engage automatically as well as part of that process flow, that strategy, allowing then suppliers to simply interact with the Fairmarkit solution in a very streamlined conversational manner, where language is essentially conversational. I'm okay to conduct this conversation with you, and then the system will interact with me in that manner. So I know that we have a truncated timetable. I would love to spend at least 45 more minutes here, but that's the idea behind what we're seeing here, is the ability to intercept the demand, where the demand is generated, process it in the right manner, whether it's pointing it to the right buying channel, whether it's engaging a sourcing process that is either driven by the end user or procurement, and engage on the right sourcing tools, whether it is simple RFXs, whether it's auctions, whether it is negotiations. That's all driven by this AI strategy element that is governing Fairmarkit.
That's great. And I think I'll bring on a question here from Oliver, and it kind of speaks to your last box, which we didn't get to in the demo, but because of technical constraints, surely as well, is will this connect to ERP, right? What happens at the end of this process?
100%. Everything that happens in Fairmarkit is meant to be integrated back to your system of demand generation, demand capture. So we can send it back to your P2P, to your ERP, in the form of a new purchase requisition, a purchase order, perhaps sending it back to your contract lifecycle management workspace, right? We want to send that data back to you so that your teams don't have to swivel chair and rekey everything again.
Can also be end-to-end coming in from an MRP, right? So again, fully autonomous planning, autonomous sourcing, back into planning, updating outline agreements. It doesn't just have to be a transaction itself. It can be any source.
Yeah, super cool. And one of the things that I caught right in the demo was like that column called benchmark price. I'm wondering if you'd speak to that in terms of like, what are you bringing intelligence to be able to say like, hey, the 3 quotes you're getting, like that's enough, right? Or it's not enough, right? Because the benchmark price. I'm just wondering how that works.
There's actually an elaborate mechanism behind it where we use the customer zone benchmark data. For example, some customers want to use their last price paid or their average price paid. We're starting to be able to use, for example, last quotes that may still be valid, which introduces then the question, hey, do we need to source this, or do we need to go and purchase from a supplier to give us a quote and their quote's still valid for another 30 days, right? And the system is then using this intelligence to essentially nudge you towards the right benchmark and then provide all the details. Hey, this is above or under, maybe you should award to this. And that bid analysis agent that I briefly showed, that continues to provide additional insight on perhaps what you want to do going forward with these types of decisions.
That seems like a pretty powerful column in that case.
It is.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for the demo. I know I've spoken a lot, so I think I'm going to throw it over to Sheena here to get real with us.
All right, let's get real. So Fairmarkit's positioned as an autonomous sourcing platform. And Tristan, I love how you explain the difference between autonomous and autonomy. But kind of how do you avoid being pigeonholed as a tactical tail spend or kind of just another sourcing tool? Like, why would you put this on top of other tools that you've already invested in?
Yeah, it's a journey, I would say, for most customers, right? So if we think about the main challenge that customers come to us with, it's about capacity creation. It's about identifying areas of opportunity to extract value, but at the same time, not create a massive team, right? That needs to go do these tactical activities. So a lot of customers start there and they start seeing that there's actually a lot of benefit from automating the sourcing process in that tactical entail, and start bringing that more and more into the strategic, because what we're actually seeing is that 95% of sourcing events that an organization actually runs, not complex to run, right? Like it might be high dollar value, but the complexity of the event is actually quite low. So it's just about a comfort level, and that's why we see most customers start there but expand out quite rapidly.
And that brings me, I mean, directly, I mean, you couldn't have set it up better into my next question is, so like you said, there are a lot of kind of not complex categories out there, but when you're looking at the very complex categories, where does Fairmarkit not perform well? And how do you help customers fill that gap?
Well, Sheena, I can take that question. The reality is most of our customers start in the tactical spend and they nudge us to move into that more strategic type spend. And we've been developing those capabilities over the years. And the fact is, for some of our customers, we are their only sourcing tool. We do realize, we acknowledge that some customers have really high complexity scenarios. For example, those logistics sourcing events with multitude of data points that require high degrees of optimization. We are frankly not there yet. We want to be there, and we will be there because that is part of our roadmap, right? We want to be the single sourcing tool regardless of the sourcing complexity, but the highly complex, the ones that are often associated with sourcing optimization, are scenarios that are not best served by Fairmarkit yet.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Of course.
And I'd want to bring a question in, actually, what kind of links to it, which is Mark asking. It's a broad question, but I think you kind of touched it very quickly during the demo, so I wanted to give you another opportunity, which is, what is the AI augmentation capability provided in the strategic spend segment? So more of that complexity and more of what you were referring to, Sheena.
What I would say is that in the strategic, it's about more so taking the steps in between and helping to automate some of that process. But in terms of the actual scope and requirements building, right? So like the scope of work that Tiago showed us, or the identifying what the right strategy is that needs to be applied to the sourcing event. Like these are like repetitive tasks in the strategic sourcing process that Fairmarkit helps to augment with. Are we saying that our SOW that we create is 100% correct? Of course not. There's always going to be a certain level of involvement from the human that needs to refine it to make sure that the requirements actually meet what they need. So these are just some of the elements that are really important to consider. But same thing goes all the way to the bid analysis on the other side, right? Where historically customers would have brought in large consultancies or even have weeks and weeks of work to compare different proposals from different suppliers. Our bid analysis will look through any document the supplier attaches. So Excel sheets, PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, whatever it is, it'll actually synthesize all that information down and say, here's the breakdown. And then that breakdown can be customized by customer. So these are the elements where the system isn't going to make the decision of the outcome of that, right? So it's not fully autonomous, but it's getting you 90% of the way there.
Yeah. And that's why I would say, like, LLM is the great drafting machine, right? And that leads greatly into the last segment of the show here, which is the ProcureTech market map. Tiago, you mentioned roadmap, so I'd love to give you another opportunity here just to speak to where Fairmarkit fits into the overall ProcureTech space, where you're going, how you think about partnerships. Just love to get your take on those last couple things here.
Absolutely. So for Fairmarkit, our strategy is simple. We want that sourcing yellow bubble to be 3 times over crossed. We are going to be that one solution, but we understand that solution needs adjacent capabilities around, for example, intake management, which you saw a glimpse of what Fairmarkit can do today. And as we work with some of our partners on intake, those capabilities become even more robust. We are, like a lot of folks in this space, going deep into the AI agent space. We essentially have an entire strategy where our agents augment the workforce of our customers. And that's the idea behind this, is to own the sourcing space. We need to be able to bring intelligence and either automate or assist the processes of getting data in, making the right decision, and pushing data out to the right stakeholders.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks so much, Tristan and Tiago, for coming on the show today, showing us what you've been doing at Fairmarkit. Very interesting stuff. How can people reach you if they want to learn more, right? If they want to have that 45-minute first date that Tiago was referring to earlier.
I would say the best way is to reach out to us either on LinkedIn. So we're all on LinkedIn at Fairmarkit. We love LinkedIn. That's one great way. Or send us an email. You can send me an email and I'll forward it on to the right person. It's Tristan@fairmarkit.com. Super easy. Yeah, look forward to some more chats.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks so much, guys. And for everybody else watching, I just put the QR code up. I've got a big newsletter edition on the ProcureTech Cup that's starting next week. So if you were there last year, you know what it's all about, right? Getting LinkedIn's favorite ProcureTech solution to be unearthed from the tournament format. If you've never participated, I don't think you know what you're in for. So come and check out the newsletter on Sunday night. I'll tell you what it's all about. You can follow the action on LinkedIn next week. And if you're doing transformation, procurement transformation, thinking about your strategy, your tech roadmaps, Sheena and RiseNow are great at assisting clients to do that with the consulting firm. I can also help. So make sure you reach out and we can help you design that roadmap, execute on it, set up continuous improvement processes and everything in between. So that being said, Sheena, Tiago, Tristan, thanks so much for coming on the show this week. And we'll see you for the tournament next week, everybody. Make sure you fill your brackets. Bye-bye.